Worm is a web serial by J.C. McCrae, also known as Wildbow. You can read Worm in its original format by visiting parahumans.wordpress.com or donate to Wildbow's Patreon at patreon.com/wildbow. This story isn't intended for young or sensitive readers. Readers who are on the lookout for trigger warnings are advised to give Worm a pass. For a complete list, check the description for all of Worm's trigger warnings.
Well, we have reached season 2, theoretically, of our theoretical Worm television show. Here, as always, joining me is Allan. Allan, welcome.
Ew.
And myself, Jacob. I should have said that. We'll fix it in post. And Michael, thank you, as always.
Absolutely.
A resident audio guru, something like that.
Perfect.
His editing keeps us going and his laughter keeps me warm at night.
There we go. It's so lovely. Oh man, wow. We wrapped up season 1, theoretically.
Yeah.
Still work to be done there. I think we'll piece together some final pieces as we sort of continue reading through everything. But now we've definitely entered season 2, and a fun little way to start it. Before we jump in, I'm just going to say we've sort of been talking. It's from this point on is going to get pretty difficult to talk arc to arc about important characters and arcs and things like that without spoiling future events and moments. So while the Brockton Bay Book Club, our sister podcast, will still remain spoiler-free, arc to arc, of course, for any readers following along. Anyone who's been listening up to this point, we're not going to just outright spoil everything in ink. We're definitely going to just casually spoil stuff that happens, character deaths, character not deaths, battles, things like that, big moments. So if that is something that you want to avoid, we will miss you, but definitely tune in once you have finished reading the story. So just fair warning, that's the big warning we're going to put here at the front. Spoilers, beware for the entirety of Worm through Arc 30. And so that, without further ado, I think we can dive into Arc 9 here, which is a unique arc. The first non-Taylor arc, or like the full arc is not from Taylor's point of view. And we get to enjoy seeing the post-Leviathan Brockton Bay through the eyes of the Wards.
Yeah, I think overall, this is we're going to introduce an episode for a new season to like keep people on their toes. This is a banger right here.
I agree.
Keeps people on their toes. You know, they're coming into season 2. They don't know quite what to expect. And I get that this is somewhat of a bait and switch because you're kicking it off with this episode. And then, the rest of them. Well, no, I take it back. I need to look ahead a little bit, but we kind of do move right back into our group, our regular group dynamic immediately following. But I want to say, given the fact that we'll have the Slaughterhouse 9 coming up, and that's just nothing but alternate points of view. I guess I should have thought before I spoke. I think this will set a precedence in the fact that there's going to be a lot of different points of view, more than just the Undersiders.
No, I think you've touched on one of my main thoughts here was that up until this point, we could really get away with really seeing the entire first season through Taylor's perspective. Like we've talked about a few other scenes and stuff like that, just kind of help flesh things out. but really everything is Taylor is the audience's POV character for the first season, no doubt. And as the story develops, while we're not losing that, we're definitely going to want to jump around a bit to really explore this world and the story. And I love that this opens with no Taylor. Essentially, you could arguably, and I'm sure we will argue, go through the whole episode without showing Taylor. I mean, except maybe at the very, very end, if you wanted to sort of tease the ending.
Which I think is a great lead in to the next episode as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just to remind you that, like, there's our character. They're not completely gone.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, so many great ways to end the episode, which we're jumping way past it, but it's relevant. Just to the little teases, because you end season 1 with where is she? What's she gonna do? How's her relationship with the Undersiders? Like all this kind of stuff. Coil teases, all that kind of thing. And then so that's everyone's like big question. And then to not answer that question for the entire first episode is so good. I love that. I think it's brilliant to just sort of keep the audience hooked, waiting, and then still just sort of tease it at the end, but not really answer everything, which is really fun.
Yeah. Overall, I think, oh man, so much fun. This is another one of those where most of my notes are for this podcast and not our book club.
So let's talk. Let's talk in. We always like to get our like cold open out of the way or something like that. I've kind of played around with what that may or may not want to look like, but I really like, honestly, the very first chapter in the story. I love the idea of Weld being the sort of POV character for a lot of this beginning part. I think it just works so well. He's new to the scene. One small change I wanted to run by you. What do you think of this? I think, unlike his character in the story, where he was present for the Leviathan fight, although not really mentioned, I think it might work better if he's not present for that fight, for the story.
I was going to say, he's got to either be there and he understands the situation because he was there, or he just wasn't. I think it's really good to not have him there. I think that plays off better.
And I like that he could still be a veteran of Endbringer fights, right? He could have been at any number of other fights. There's been dozens of them at this point, but just not in Brockton Bay. I think that sort of separation from the rest of the wards is pretty important for his character early on. So I think that kind of would just sort of help solidify that.
Yeah, it helps widen the gap, but also like you said, if we say that he has been a veteran of these fights before, then not completely without some experience to talk about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. But
I was thinking
just the imagery of him coming in. Sorry to cut you off. The imagery of him coming in on the helicopter there is like, I feel like I've seen that scene a dozen times in every like FBI, The Fugitive. Here's the dossier. Here's your team. Here's the major players. Like it's just It's so cliche, but it works. I love it.
I think that needs to I'm thinking I know there's the talk of meeting him when he gets into the helicopter, but I like the idea of just maybe kicking it off with the helicopter and the headsets and him looking out the window at just an absolutely fucked up Brockton Bay.
Right. Yeah. Yep.
And then cutting back inside and Piggott being like, here's the file,
Yep.
Or maybe she does the talk, does the file. You've got plenty of time to study, and then maybe a cutaway and be like, hey, we're almost there, and then he looks out the window and we see Brockton Bay.
Oh, I see.
And then as if, helicopter is, that's where we zoom out. We're no longer in the helicopter looking at it. We're outside, very distant. The helicopter is almost a speck over the ruined city. Worm.
I like it. Yeah.
Yeah. Because you just got to have the destruction. you just got to show that this is a city that's gotten
Absolutely
hit hard.
I think even too to highlight that too. I think we don't really show the city at the end of season 1. From like the wide sort of helicopter vantage point, right?
Yeah.
So to really open with that to sell the impact of the aftermath, I think is great.
Yeah. I think showing the memorial is good imagery. And other than that, like, you're right. I don't think showing the destruction until this season is a good choice. That being said, he comes in and there's a couple of the changes with Weld I would make.
Okay.
He doesn't need to go to school.
Yeah.
Sort of a minor thing. We don't
that's good.
go to school. This is not like the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina the Teenage Witch or anything. We're not following them in school as much day to day. Since we've kind of gotten out of that. We're not dealing with school drama now. We can get rid of it. He's a smart guy who is a giant metal Case 53. We can just have him take online classes or have his GED or taking college courses already. Like, it's so dumb to have him go to school.
No, I agree. I think you don't even have to mention it, honestly. You don't even mention schooling. I don't think it's important to his character.
Yeah, it isn't. I just, as something I noted here, I'm like, why? Why would we ever send him to school?
No, that's good. I agree with that. What else do you have?
Other things I have, playing up the fact that Armstrong found him in a scrapyard. The fact that he is a Case 53. And focus on the human hero relationship is big thing, because that's kind of the point of him being there, is to showcase like he is a very humanizing Case 53 that scores well in PR with people. So I think playing up all that, I think those are some good things to like just bump up when we're having Weld talk and talking about Weld.
Yeah, I'm definitely in favor of highlighting the Case 53 element, especially if we want to highlight that and maybe a bit stronger in the first season, depending on how we want to shape things. Just as that develops, of course. I think that's a really strong intro to his character, because
maybe even
we don't really see. Yeah,
I was gonna say maybe have Clockblocker ask like, "Yo, where's your mark?" And be like, "My heel."
Yeah, exactly. Because we don't really get a reoccurring Case 53 until Weld, really. So
I mean, I was gonna say, because we've run into Gregor and Neuter, but forget
they are our like intro tease to Case 53s, but
especially with the file,
I
do like that's another concerted mystery that we will have going on.
Oh yeah, a great one. That's great.
I don't think I have anything else for him, at least in the first chapter.
First few bits here. Yeah. I think that about. I mean, I love. We've talked about it before. Obviously, we're going to be cutting and restructuring lots of things, but so much of the way Wildbow writes just translates so well to screen. Like, you can just, his first interaction with the wards and just butchering everything. Like, it just plays out. I see that playing out so clearly. So I think a lot of that is just going to work really well, just translating from page to screen.
Yeah. I think going off, immediately lends itself pretty well to the patrol with Shadow Stalker. I think maybe replacing the chain that Flechette has with just cable. Really small change I have. I don't know how I feel about the whole, zipping from building to building with the cable.
It's an interesting. It's funny. This is a good thing to bring up now, because this is going to be something where it's not really something of our focus as we're just sort of working on script as opposed to like visuals. But I agree. I think Flechette is the first of many, many times when we're going to interact with powers that are really challenging to think about how to accurately depict them on screen without the aid of narration or exposition in the text.
Yeah. So I was thinking about that because I'm like, it's got such an explanation to it, and also, like at least you could maybe get if it was just the cleats and the climbing up buildings. Like there is enough hints given her other powers and how she uses them that's how the cleats work. You could even show that pretty easily, I feel like. But the cabling and explaining the cabling and stuff, while it might be a 5-second explanation, I don't know, it feels a little bit odd.
Yeah, I agree. That'd be a fun conversation to have with a director and a DP and your and your lead editor. These are the types of conversations I can't wait to have one day with Wildbow beside us as we work through the fun challenges of bringing some of these powers to life.
Yeah,
be a lot of fun.
Just bumping up Flechette and Arian. Love that.
Yep.
You have anything for the patrol with Shadowstalker?
Not particularly. I think it works pretty well as is. I do think giving more screen time to Flechette is going to be a good idea. I have a feeling, and again, I'm drawing both from my original reading of Worm and then knowing that I'm just remembering so much as we read on. But Flechette might be one of those characters that's good to sort of keep in the rotation a bit more prominently than she is.
I think we had a list for our retrospective. We wanted to bump up New Wave, bump up the Wards, the Perry and Flechette.
Yep.
My go-to.
To mention that. Yeah.
My Forbidden Suite, my Taylor Clock Blocker one. Colin and Dragon, Theo, and then Coil and the Travelers.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Specifically in those combinations too.
Yeah. Yes. Agreed. Kind of the mini teams within everything. Yeah. So definitely. I like that. I think giving Flechette a few moments is going to be great. Her and Perian going to be a lot of fun. Going to be a fan favorite. Couple for sure.
9.3 has a ton of interesting exposition.
Yeah, it does. A lot of interesting stuff.
I think we talked about it in the other episode, but I do really, this is where I love just sitting around. This is part of why I love Ward. I love the mundane, just learning about powers in the world. And I would sit here and take college classes on parahumans in a heartbeat.
Right.
One thing that it points to with Flechette, there's a mention, and I don't know if it's ever mentioned in Worm again, but it's a big part of Ward is Flechette's group trigger event.
Interesting.
Flechette is part of a group trigger.
Right.
And I don't know if that's ever mentioned, like any time in Worm that group triggers are a thing.
Well, I don't know if it's directly mentioned because we get actually coming up soon, I think within the next 2 arcs or so, sort of a side story, but we get Scrub's trigger. And I think if I remember the arc correctly, I think the attempt there was to create a group trigger, but he's the only one who triggered.
Yeah.
Something like that. But I think that's the closest we get. I don't think we ever see an actual group trigger.
Yeah. But that's something that leads into a fairly big point in the sequel series, Ward. Is specifically there's a lot of dealing with group triggers. That's a dynamic that is thought about and talked about and is kind of essential to the plot.
Interesting
for a lot of Ward. So I didn't remember that was here, and Flechette's group is one of them. So that is something that, in this, she talks about she isn't sure, but
Mhm.
I think we should make that she's a little bit more aware that she is a part of a group trigger. And that's why she gets kind of a grab bag of powers.
Interesting. That makes sense. Okay. Yeah, and I haven't. I've read the first couple arcs of Ward, but I have definitely not gotten into it. So that'll be fun. Just another reason for me to go and finally read through that.
I know.
Stifle your disappointment in me. I can hear it.
No. This is the time. This is the time.
This is the time.
Punch up the family and the Case 53s a little bit more because we're talking about them.
Yeah.
I also put big V, little V relationship with Victoria and Vista.
Yeah, we talked about it in the book club. That's one of my favorite scenes in the story so far. Just the way it's written, and I don't think. I mean, I wouldn't want to change anything with that. I think that would. It's such a great scene to capture.
Yeah, I said it before. I'm a sucker for healthy, dialogue, and man, it's just
exactly.
This nails it.
It's rare, which sucks. It's so good.
And then we get a pretty good intro into Slaughterhouse 9 with the murder mystery.
Ooh, what a fun introduction for them. Now, I know we teased a little bit in the last episode or the one, no, I guess it was the last episode, talking about teasing the Slaughterhouse 9 at the end of season 1, which we'll play around with that. I still like the idea there, but if we don't, having this be the introduction to them, I think is a really fun, sort of horrifying mystery.
Yeah.
Everybody knows the name. We're seeing some of their MO a bit. Everyone's like, oh, they're in town. Oh, they're in town. There's like whispers and everyone's afraid, but the audience isn't in on it yet. I think there's a lot of power there.
Which brings us to the fight following that.
Yeah.
Does this fight need to happen?
It's funny. I was thinking about it too. My first thought was no, but I do think a little bit of action is good in the episode, just so it's not super, what's the word I'm thinking of? Just slow.
Dialogue heavy.
But I do think you could change it quite a bit. We're still keeping this the core element, basically, that the travelers are sort of playing on the defensive, or intentionally, like they're controlling everything. The travelers are very much in control of this fight.
Yeah,
and sort of playing on the defensive a bit. The seeing the team in action under Weld's leadership, I think would be good to see. But I agree. It's tough. It's definitely tough. I don't really like the fight itself. I liked reading it because I liked seeing, Trickster get to use his powers and
exactly ballistic, all that kind of stuff. Glory Girl, that's a fun one. I think especially if you did it as a quick succession of like them getting their ass kicked really quickly, then I think this works well. But I think in terms of pacing, like we're gonna get some fun stuff in the next episode.
Yeah, we do.
I don't feel like, in terms of we want slow, fast. I think this has enough teasing you into season 2. Also, I like Weld, as I read him, while he is a stickler for the rules and a good boy, I feel like, there's talk before of like his focus should be on reaching out and trying to fix this city and not on picking unnecessary fights. And I feel like this is one of those things where like he really should let this one go. Not just, my opinion, but like as a character, like clearly his team is tired. Clearly he's not in the right mindset. Like this is not the time to do this. And
you could even keep some of our little favorite elements there. Like what if there is a quick little confrontation, Ballistic launches Glory Girl, Trickster swaps a few people around, and then Weld's like, okay, we're out of here. no, this is not the fight right now.
I think that's good.
Then just kind of end it there.
Yeah. There's a few cool moments that happen in that I like and enjoy. You know, like I said, you know, launching Glory Girl, Clockbacher, like kind of realizing like his power. I forget if it's his power doesn't work on Weld or he just turned it off at the last second. I thought that was a good bit.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Just and then Kid Win shooting himself with his own gun. You know,
yeah,
get those like, in real quick.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, you can do this. You can do it much quicker than it needs to be.
I do think as we move into the post fight with them talking about the bodies, actually have maybe we should make Glory Girl the one who knows about Slaughterhouse 9. I'm a big Victoria fan, and she might be the biggest cape geek out of all of these people. Like, you know, low key, she eats, like when we talk about her at the college, that is what she does. She audits college parahumans classes. Like they were in there and she's like, yeah, I already took this class before. Like that's what she is. She is a huge fucking nerd. So I feel like her being like, 3 sets of 3, 9, Slaughterhouse 9.
She just does the Sherlock thing right there. Just kind of figures it out. Yeah, no, I like that. I think that works well.
She could even go like, she could even mention something. She walks up. She's like, anybody else think the like body on chains, while disgusting, kind of reminds you of Mannequin? And then like, they're like, travelers, like we got to deal with you.
Oh like yeah. Got it. No, I like that actually. I think that works well.
We interrupt our scheduled program to bring you a word from our sponsor, Zencastr, a one-stop shop for all your podcasting needs. When we first started this podcast, we knew we needed a service that would let us record remotely. After doing some research, Zencastr was the obvious choice. We started using Zencastr and never looked back. It's super easy to record a podcast with Zencastr. All you do is log in, invite people to join your room, and start recording a high-quality podcast right away. You can record studio-quality sound and up to 4K video with your guests. You can rest easy even if you have an unstable connection, knowing Zencastr's multi-layered backups ensure you always have your recordings in the highest quality. We do all our recording in Zencastr, and when the episode is ready, we can distribute it to all major podcast platforms. Zencastr has made podcasting so much easier with its all-in-one podcasting platform and tools. Go to zencastr.com/pricing and use my code Brocktonbaybc, and you'll get 30% off your first month of any Zencastr paid plan. I want you to have the same easy experiences I do for all my podcasting and content needs. It's time to share your story. That's zencastr.com/pricing and use our code Brocktonbaybc. And now back to our scheduled programming.
I don't know why I have this thing about Kid Win.
He goes to meet Chariot, which one of those scenes where like we don't need to keep it. I feel like that's not too necessary. It's nice that it sort of introduces the idea that capes are being recruited by villains, but like I don't know, it's not that important. We could probably cut that especially I feel like that's probably going to break up the episode's pacing a good bit. I don't know. We could keep it in. I do like Kid Win getting a win a little bit because he gets the little nice work, that kind of nod from Pigott and Weld. So that's kind of nice, but maybe we could again, it's something you could give that same moment in the next arc very easily.
Yeah. And I'll be honest, I don't remember Chariot, despite being a spy, doing all that much.
I don't think he does either. I remember right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's give it the axe. We need to give more things the axe.
Yeah.
Just cut it. Cut for time. Yeah, you know what, that works because we sort of get, honestly, with that being said, then we do get, the little bit of the Slaughterhouse 9, the fight scene, that sort of breaks up two really good dialogue moments. Because before that, with Clock Blocker, Glory Girl, and Vista, and then after that, with Vista and Weld, and then Vista and Shadowstalker, which are, I think, both really great moments. So splitting that with the Travelers and Slaughterhouse 9, I think that would work well.
Yeah.
And I do like that, because talking about sort of like episode arcs, thinking of little arcs and episodes, that's sort of Weld's mini arc this episode, is going from the new guy on the block whose team doesn't respect him to, at the very end, the team's still working on it, but Vista sort of has a bit of a respectful moment. Like, there's a bit of respect there at the end. And that's just a nice little cap on Weld's introduction arc, if you will.
Yeah, I don't think it needs an intro or a closer. I think, honestly, you've got Shadowstalker at the end of this episode. Gets knocked out, and then bam, you hit Worm roll credits if you wanted to do Worm there rather than the beginning.
Oh, true. I'm a sucker for tropes. I am. I do like the idea of the title coming at the end of the first episode of the season, as opposed to the beginning. I don't know why.
also, if we wanted to replace Kid Win with, we'll just keep following Weld kind of as he goes to recruit this kid. Do that.
See, I like that. I actually like that a lot.
I don't know how you would. I don't even think you need to play out there's a spy in the midst. Maybe. Maybe you just have the kid go to the other room as soon as Weld leaves. He gets up and types like, "I'm in."
Yeah.
And we don't know who he's reporting to. Just deepening the who does who work for.
Yeah. No, I actually like that a lot. And see, these are the types of changes I think that we really need to be thinking about too. Because you're right, that works way, way better to make Weld more of the focus point for this episode, especially without Taylor. So, yes, we've got Flechette and Shadowstalker alone, and we've got even in the little dialogue between Clock Blocker and those three, you could even have Weld sort of not there, but like, off to the side, kind of just noticing that they're talking. And then, of course, the little bit of the fight, the scuffle, and then the talk at the end. So he really is present for most of our major scenes this episode. I like that, actually. I really do. I'm kind of talking myself into it. Sort of keeping him as the audience's POV, if you will.
Yeah. I think that works out pretty well. Going forward from this, we're gonna be launching back into Undersiders and then back out again. I think this is a pretty solid setup.
Yeah.
I got. I think we're touching on the mysteries, that we wanted to punch up. As I look back, some of the things we wanted to keep in mind was we're punching up we're building up to the Slaughterhouse 9, which will be our clear and present danger. We're enhancing the mysterious benefactor, of Coil. We're also, adding more to the Case 53s. Like, it's a pretty good job. And we're starting off strong with some good, just a good spot to just exposit a lot about powers as well, because we're kicking it off with him talking about like classifications, and then we're literally going to school about this stuff, which I find immensely interesting.
Yeah, this is interesting. This is a good thing we probably should talk about, because I'm kind of on the fence. Like, there's obviously the Harry Potter trope where, our main character doesn't know anything about magic. Good fortune that he's at a school for magic, where we can put the exposition right into the scene and it just makes sense, right? Like, it just works perfectly for something like Harry Potter. Whereas any other time that I've seen that done, I'm always like, ugh, man, this just feels like a bit heavy-handed. One example of one way that it's done very subtly, it doesn't really impact the story that much, which is probably why it gets away with it, is in X-Men 3, the original X-Men 3. There's the one villain superhero whose ability is to sense the abilities of everybody around her, and she's got her own classification system. And she's like, "Oh, you're a class 3, class 4, whatever, like that." And then she comes up at the end when she senses Jean Grey, and she's like, "I'm sensing something crazy, class 5." And like, you have no idea what these classes mean, but you've never heard class 5 before. So just her saying that, class 5, like as the audience, you're like, oh, she sensed something big. And like, you don't really need to know more than that. And again, that's obviously way, way, way less as involved as the PRT classification systems. But just that idea of you don't really need to exposit that much to get the point across. So I'm torn because the nerd in me wants to sit down in that classroom with you and just take notes, right? But I'm wondering how much we should keep.
The nerd in me also says to keep it. You know, there's a bad trope of every fantasy and sci-fi writer having all these great ideas and lore, and they're trying to figure out a way to piece it all together. And truth be told, the only person who's perfected that was, of course, J.R.R. Tolkien.
The legend.
Yeah, the legend who wrote the lore before the actual story. And I think in this case, Wildbow is also one of those J.R.R. Tolkien figures. He wrote he knew the end point. He had the world. He built the characters out, and then finally put the events in chronological order, to lead along that timeline. Which is what makes, the whole thing about he can swap out, main character dies, we move to a different main character, because the timeline still happens. Regardless of what characters are alive or not, whatever happens, the timeline, still exists. So I think this is one of those cases also that people mask their bad writing with lore dumping. But this is good writing, and it's good lore. Like
and it's lore dumping.
If you like heroes, these are. Here's the thing: these aren't old concepts in my mind. Like a lot of this is, when Peter Parker has to sit there and explain his his spiderweb shooter. Like I like Spider-Man. I like his web shooter. I don't need an explanation. Is it coming out of his wrist or not? That's pretty much it. Like, I need you to spend the 15 seconds to tell me that I made a wide nozzle now, so I can do narrow nozzle and wide nozzle. It's like, okay, cool. That's all you need, because it's not that deep. It's not that interesting. But then we get to this world, and I want to know how things work. And if there's one thing that Wildbow loves to talk about, it's how things work. So I think this is one of those where if you're watching season 2, you're interested in how these things are working, you're gonna be there. You're gonna hear, the list of powers. He just rattles them off in the little nursery rhyme. You're gonna be like, oh my gosh, like what a cool list. I'm gonna take a guess at what I think those are, because they don't really explain a whole lot of them. And then, you move on and we're in the school, and then they're talking about trigger events and how they work and history and all this stuff. Like these little snippets, even if they go on for more than 30 seconds, that's fine. I can't get enough of this. And
that's fair.
That's fair. Yeah. I think it's a fresh enough idea that it will intrigue people into enjoying the exposition.
Yeah. No, it definitely is that. It's definitely unique enough and well thought out enough to not be boring or tropey in that regard, for sure. It feels well placed.
We're talking about Harry Potter. Harry Potter is one of those soft magic systems that
Mm-hmm.
a little bit drives me up the wall, because it's like the only magic they talk about is the ones like immediately relevant to the story.
Oh, yeah,
And
100%.
there is no explanation in the entire Harry Potter universe as to how magic works, and it drives me up a fucking wall.
No, that's so
because
true.
magic's just whatever you want it to be, and you can like you just swish and flick, and whoever flicked harder won. Like and loved more and is tall, because only tall people are deserving of love in the Harry Potter movie franchise. That was my takeaway.
No, Harry Potter fails one of my favorite fantasy sci-fi like storytelling devices that writers you're supposed to kind of follow, which is whatever you create in your world that's not explained in our world, right? Not explained in the real world. So whatever makes it fantasy and sci-fi, right? You need to be able to go and only go 1 degree beyond the initial explanation. So for example, in Star Wars, right? You go, oh, I have created a ship that can travel faster than the speed of light. That's a cool thing. And then you have to be able to answer one question of how. So you go, someone says, oh, cool, how? You go, well, the ship has a hyperdrive. This is a special engine that lets them travel at hyperspeed. You go, cool, that's all you need. If they go how beyond that, you don't need to do that. That's too deep now. You've already answered the immediate question. You can move on. Harry Potter doesn't do that. You go, oh, here is a magic system. It's wand based and uses kind of Latin. Cool. How does it work? No, there's no answer. It
no
doesn't answer like
no
basic answer. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, any one of those spells would be immensely like just out of proportion. People would just be using it left and right.
Yeah.
Like, any one of them.
What about the Force?
The Force.
The Force. The biggest thing about it was that it got over-explained.
Yeah. So the Force, that the how answer initially is it's unanswerable, but it's unanswerable in like the how did the universe begin, right? So the answer to that question isn't important because it's not. It's sort of fundamental to the world in sort of a very, very vague sense.
How does the Force work? It's sort of like a field that's around and in everything. And some people can manipulate it.
What am I saying? It definitely gets its answer.
Obi-Wan says it.
Yeah. It surrounds us, binds us, and holds everything
penetrates
together.
us, and and
you're right.
Literally, and then you just add the caveat, and some people can tap into that.
Yeah.
Like, that's it. And it's like, well, what can you do with that? And it's like, man, what can't you do with that?
I was going to say that actually is another good reason, though, that there probably isn't explained enough, simply because we have now millions of pages of arguments and forums about how it works and people not agreeing and things like that. So it actually, in that way, it probably wasn't given enough of a parameter.
No, I think it was good. It was a very religious answer.
It worked. It worked brilliantly for the original trilogy, without a doubt. I think beyond that, it's gotten with books and other movies and stuff like that, and midichlorians and other heresies.
Yeah, midichlorians and other heresies, a sci-fi writer's novel, like a how-to sci-fi. Like going all the way back to the because I think honestly, I think we should keep that sci-fi point you made about busting the sci-fi, like having the explanation, because I think that's very relevant for a lot of the things that Wild Bill writes about in these. My opposite explanation was going to be the Magician series, which is sort of a parody of Harry Potter. Yeah. So in that series, goes into painful detail about how stupidly complicated magic is just to do the simplest magic things. You've got to consult star charts and moon phases and what, where you are in relation to those stars. and then do your complicated, gang signs to throw up to activate the magic, but you have to do different ones depending on whether Mars is in retrograde, and like just to make a piece of origami fold itself.
Yeah.
Like, and in that one, I would say it almost goes the opposite direction of like it's. I get that you're making parody of Harry Potter and over explaining it, but it does become a little like, man, this is rough.
Yeah, definitely. And to bring that home, I mean, it's something that I think we both agree on here that Wildbow does beautifully, where I think everything in Worm is almost perfectly explained as the story goes on when needed, when it needs to be. We get answers to our questions. We get relevant information about how things work. Yeah, I think it's very, very satisfying, for lack of a better classification, a very satisfying magic system.
Yeah, it's hard for me, as I've said before, it's hard for me to read any other superhero genre. Marvel comic books, DC, movie and comic books, shows, whatnot. It's impossible for me to examine those without overlaying his system on top of them. Because it explains everything.
Yep. It does. It's like it's foundational, which I think is kind of ties into your almost heretical comparison to Tolkien. But where Tolkien's work is foundational for pretty much the entire fantasy genre at this point, I would love to see Wildbow's writings, Worm, be seen in that same light, where like, now this is the foundation for which you build your superhero stories.
Yeah. I wish, because I've read some other superhero fiction, and they just don't.
It's hard to write.
They feel like characters with powers, and not a lot unique about them. Which is a shame, because like, clearly it can be done, but sometimes it takes somebody who's just really freaking good at it.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Well, we sort of we kind of got off the rails a little bit.
That's what this one's for. We were
padding it won't be the last time. It will not be the last time. Any final thoughts on the episode? Anything we missed?
I can't think of anything.
I think we nailed it. I like it. I think it's a great pilot episode for this season. I think it ties everything together. I think it's going to be the beginning of a beautiful thing, you could say. So, well, thank you, Allan, for joining me, as always.
Thank you, Jacob, for having me.
It's a pleasure. Thank you, Michael, for making us sound good.
No problem.
And thank you to everyone for listening. This has been a pleasure and a joy. We're having an absolute blast getting to read through this again with all of you and discussing it. For anything that we missed or you disagreed with us on, please let us know. This is a lot of fun just going back and forth with us, but we would love to engage in dialogue with the rest of you. So please reach out on any of our social media platforms. Look at the links, I'm sure, in this post, in the text field here. I'm sure we'll have them all listed. But please let us know what do you disagree with? Do you think Weld's a good POV character for this arc? Do you think we should focus on somebody else? Anything we need to tease that we're not thinking about that we really need to make sure we're putting into this first episode for the rest of the season? And any other thoughts you have, we'd love to hear from you. And next episode will be Arc 10. I think we're going to keep an arc per episode here. So read Arc 10. It's a bit of a long one, longer than Arc 9 here. So get to reading and join us next time.
Thank you so much for listening. Read along with us at parahumans.wordpress.com. We'd love to hear your thoughts. What did you love? What did you hate? Anything you think we missed, etc., as long as it's kind. If you'd like to get in touch, you can find us on Twitter, Threads, Instagram, TikTok, and Reddit at Brocktonbaybc, or click the link in the description.
Did we say something that you didn't agree with that you can't just put into words on a message board or a forum or a YouTube comment? Well, now you can call us. We have a voicemail. You can call us at 980-999-0438 and let us know with your words what we said wrong.
If you'd like to fight me on the podcast, go ahead and leave a voicemail at 980-999-0438. Call in with your comment, leave your cape name, and which one of us you're going to call out on this podcast. We'd love to hear from you and love to engage with you on the podcast.
Give us some ideas on how you would adapt Worm or just thoughts on the story in general, and your voicemail might be featured on one of our episodes. Again, that's 980-999-0438. Leave your cape name and your thoughts, and stay tuned.